I'm so excited to be here today.
Thank you so much, Hannah, for being here with us. Janavi, can you please come up online and introduce our lovely speaker to the entire world? Janavi?
Hello, everyone. After a fantastic day from Questono on day one, we welcome back from the team Hannah June. Hannah is the head of design research and strategy at Questono and enjoys studying and developing three-dimensional form. She focuses on the way that we interact with the objects around us. And beginning with form, Hannah works to find the sweet spot in her designs between functionality and beauty. Over to you, Hannah.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Let me just share my screen for you guys. All right. Great. So I am very excited to share more about extended reality and the evolution of consumer behavior. This is an area that I work on during my work at Questono, which is a design and research and innovation consultancy. And I'm very interested in how consumer behavior has shifted constantly through the evolution of technology. And with the emergence of new technologies such as extended reality, we are at the precipice of a really amazing new computing revolution that I believe will really shift the way that we behave with all of the digital content that we are currently working with and expand all of the possibilities that we have. So let's get into it. I think that before we look to the future, it's really important to understand the past. And behavior has shifted dramatically with technology. Humans have always wanted to find different methods of communicating with each other and developing content for each other. And this started way back with cave paintings, people drawing pictographs to try and tell stories and to communicate in different ways. And that transformed to etching onto stone tablets. Then we developed paper and ink, which made that process a lot faster and a lot easier to transport and to share with other people. And as you can see in this fun graphic, we have constantly evolved more and more to allow us to be able to produce content more efficiently and to be able to share that information so we can start democratizing information. This has evolved all the way to what, they're showing a Palm Pilot here in this image, but now we have smartphones, massive computers that are small enough to fit into our pocket. And that is a really powerful thing. Sort of historically, we have always been trying to find ways to take things, experiences, content from our physical world and communicate that in a two-dimensional format. And we see that in the earliest forms of icons that were developed for the first Macintosh computers by Susan Kare. And I think that it's really fun to look at different icons because the purpose of this is to convey sometimes a complex idea in the most simple visual way. And that's something that as designers, we strive for. It's always about trying to simplify very complex ideas so that that information can be translated to the end user in a very streamlined way. So you can see here in these initial icons that were developed for Mac that there's very obvious icons like a piece of paper. And that is a two-dimensional thing from our physical world that we are now translating into a two-dimensional format that we can interact with on the screen. But we also have things like a garbage can. And part of Susan Kare's challenge when developing these icons was to create an icon that translated a physical object that is three-dimensional into a two-dimensional format. But I think all of us can look at this and very clearly understand that, okay, this two-dimensional thing means that I can throw away some of my digital content. So this has been something that we have continued to do as computers have progressed over time, where we are reformatting objects and experiences from the physical world that we experience into a two-dimensional format. Even in the way that we file different digital documents on Google Drive or in the cloud, we put our digital documents into folders, and those folders are filed away into other folders. And this is largely based off of physical filing cabinets. So you see that over time, we have incremental shifts in behavior in the way that we are dealing with different information, creating content, and sharing that content. All of this technology is continuing, obviously, to get more advanced and smaller. And this is our cell phones now. Our smartphones are hugely, hugely important to us. So much so that we often feel somewhat naked without these. They have become, in a sense, the most important relationship that we have, because it allows us, it becomes a vehicle, a window for us to have relationships with other people, whether it be our work, our family, our friends. And it's interesting to think about how so many experiences that we used to have in our real world have been digitized and reformatted into apps. For instance, people used to go out on physical dates and they would meet each other in bars or restaurants or in a park. Now we have apps that simulate meeting up with other people, and then that is a vehicle towards a real human interaction. Grocery shopping is something that, everyone used to go to marketplaces or to grocery stores and do the grocery shopping yourself. Especially now with COVID and everything, online grocery shopping and delivery straight to your door with services like Amazon or Fresh Direct, at least in the US, that is also completely digitizing and two-dimensionalizing an experience that we are, as humans, very used to having in the physical world. So, there is already a possibility. We're seeing how much our digital worlds and our physical worlds are colliding. And now I want to start talking about this idea of extended reality, because this really is the next wave of how these worlds will come together. So what is extended reality? Extended reality is an umbrella term for VR, which is virtual reality, AR, which is augmented reality, and MR, which is mixed reality. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what that actually means. Virtual reality is where you have a device, a piece of hardware completely over your eyes that is removing any sense or visibility of your physical environment. But what is really cool about that is that gives the developers, the artists, the designers, the ability to completely create, 100% create your entire environment and create an experience through that. They have full control of that experience. And the most common use of that, at least right now, is in video games and entertainment. The next level is augmented reality, AR. And what that is doing is it is utilizing your phone as a window to see into the real world using your camera, and then overlaying digital content into that world. So in the example, in the picture you see here, this is an app that was developed by IKEA that allows you to test furniture in your space. And I think it's very obvious how useful an application like this can be, because you are now starting to integrate these digital objects into your physical world, but you're still limited to the small window of your phone. And that brings me now to mixed reality, or MR. And this is the most advanced version of integrating both of these digital and physical worlds into one field of view. It allows you to interact with digital content and manipulate it in different ways. This digital content recognizes the environment that it's in. So it's actually sitting on a surface that it rests on. It's not just floating in space, which is essentially what augmented reality is doing. It also allows you to collaborate with other people in various ways. That person, like in the image, could be physically present with you, also using a device, but they could also appear to you as an avatar and also see the same thing you're seeing from their own point of view. And you have an amazing collaboration tool in that sense. So what all of these different areas of XR are, they're a new medium. And new mediums are very exciting, especially for artists to start playing with. A fun example of this is Microsoft Paint. This was a new way to create digital content on computers, but it was very rudimentary, it was very pixelated, it was very basic. And if you fast forward now, we have programs and software like the Adobe Suite or Photoshop, which you see here, that is much more complex, has a much higher fidelity, and is allowing people to create content in a much more customized and intense way that is creating amazing, amazing pieces of art and content and applications, everything that you can imagine. And historically, artists love exploring with new mediums. If you look back to the Impressionist painters, for instance, when a new pigment would be developed, that they would try and do everything they could to find this pigment and integrate it into their artworks, so much that with specific artists in this era, you can see certain collections of painting for certain years using a specific pigment because it was brand new, and this became an area, a medium that they were eager to explore. And this is already happening with XR. This is a performance artist, Marina Abramovic, who is a world-renowned artist. And last year, I believe in 2019, she created the first mixed reality art piece. And she was using a tool, the headset that you see here is called Magic Leap. And this is a piece of hardware that also combines software to allow people to experience digital content in their environment, again, while they're still aware of the physical environment around them. What is even more interesting is that this year, her digital artwork was auctioned off in a world-renowned art house. And why that is so interesting is because now we are starting to see a behavioral shift where people are starting to understand or believe that digital content has a monetary value attached to it. And 10 years ago, if someone told you that someone paid $1 million, say, for a hologram, essentially, that no one else could see unless they were using a certain device, we would think that person is crazy. But because we are so enmeshed in the digital world, we're starting to see this behavior shift happen, where people realize that there is a lot of value in digital content. And now there's even more value if it can exist and interact with our real world. There's also a lot of very practical applications for XR right now. So you see here that currently the US Air Force and military is using virtual reality. So again, covering up your entire environment. And this is currently being used for training as well as recruitment. And this has proven to be a very successful way to recruit people because it is creating a very realistic experience. People know what they're getting into and get excited about it because they're transported into this new world. And it's also proven to be a very effective training tool that reduces costs significantly because you can program very different, unique interactions, training models, and there's very little overhead cost. On the other end, you have a person on an assembly line using an augmented reality device. So she's using something that is similar to Google Glass, which I think a lot of us are probably familiar with, but it is overlaying digital content into the world around her. So what is really useful about a use case like this is that she can be empowered now to put different pieces, components in the right place at the right time. It is enhancing her capabilities because it is showing her the right information at the right time. There's other very cool use cases, like an instance of a use case is that she could have an issue on the assembly line and call an expert about this. And that expert could then look through her point of view and feed her instructions in real time. So this is obviously already in certain markets and people who are very invested in innovating for the future, but there are massive applications across every sector. So it's important for, across the world, across industries, people to start understanding the power and the potential of technologies like XR. And why is it so powerful? I want to talk about Edgar Dale's theory of the cone of learning. And this theory states that after 2 weeks' time, most people only remember 10% of what they read, but they remember 90% of what they do. And this is largely in part because what we do, if we're doing something, it's a very active thing. We are involving all of our senses and it uses an active part of our brain. Whereas reading is more of a passive interaction. You can get distracted more easily. You're listening to something in the background. Your mind isn't as honed into that action. So you're less likely to remember that. So I think it becomes somewhat obvious that now what the power then of spatial computing or mixed reality can be. You are taking interactions that have been, to a degree, passive on our screens, and now bringing them into the world that we are in, and allowing people to engage in it in a very active way, in a much more human way, by breaking away from this screen. Now that brings me to an interesting study, or an interesting area called captology, that I've been doing a lot more research in recently. And the definition of captology is the study of how computer technology can be used to change people's opinions or to persuade them to do something. Now, this study was pioneered by B.J. Fogg, and B.J. Fogg started Stanford University's Persuasive Technology Lab. Unfortunately, it is no longer around, but he created this report and this study in the early 90s, and I think you can get an idea of that based off of the examples that you're seeing in this image that he's using, things like a pocket calculator or an arcade game or a digital pet. But it's amazing the foresight that he was able to have to understand, or to realize and predict, that computers would have a massive impact on our behavior through the lens of persuasion. So thinking about these, he outlines 3 different functional areas of computers, and that is a tool to increase a capability, being a social actor, which creates relationships, and it can also be a medium, which provides experiences. So let's actually apply this to a real case study then, because I think it's going to make a lot more sense and be a lot more tangible that way. But if we look at maybe a bicycle, for instance, as a tool, that is increasing our capabilities as a human being to be able to move faster. You can move from point A to point B a lot faster on a bike than you can if you were walking. And now let's think about fitness. Think about this through the lens of fitness. We want to work with a personal trainer if we want to get more fit, because that is creating a relationship that we have with a professional, someone who is trained and at the best at that thing, to help us then be better. That is fostering a relationship then between us and another person. An example of this in the digital world is something like LinkedIn. It is connecting you with other people through this platform. And the last side of media is a computer as a medium, which is what is providing experiences. And a fitness class could be an example of this within this context. You go to a gym or a fitness class because you're motivated. You're with other people who are struggling with the same thing you are. You guys are on the same mission together. It's much more inspiring than, say, working out alone in your home to a YouTube video. It's not the best experience. And I know that because living during this time of COVID, we're all forced to be doing exercise in our home instead of going to the gym. And that obviously is not as optimal of an experience as going to a gym. Now, a big part because of COVID, but it was already a successful company before this. But that brings me to a company, a startup that has combined all of these different functional areas in a really successful package. And that is the Peloton bike. They realized that there was an opportunity to connect people in their homes who needed to work out in their homes, be it because of preference or convenience, but to add additional value by connecting them to personal trainers, real people who would have live classes every day with real other people who were in that physical class being recorded in real time. So this is now empowering users to be able to have an in-class, in-gym experience from their home. It's not surprising when you look at it this way, why Peloton has done so well in this time of COVID. They are allowing people to have stronger connections by leveraging technology. But this is still limited to a screen. Now, connecting this case study of Peloton with extended reality, how much better and immersive could this experience be if it was in mixed reality? What happens when our digital and physical worlds collide on a much deeper level? That is the future. There is so much potential here. Currently, we are pros at digital hierarchy, thinking about hierarchy two-dimensionally. This is what UI and UX designers are so amazingly good at. And thinking about what information is the most important to see, and then trickling down with kind of from most important to least important information. And this is so important right now because there is content everywhere. You have a millisecond to get someone's attention. So hierarchy in the digital format is more important than ever. But that changes when we start bringing our digital content into the physical world. We need to start thinking about content three-dimensionally, not two-dimensionally. So my background is actually in product design. And product designers, when they think about hierarchy, think about it in this sense. You think about volumetric elements that are dominant, subdominant, and subordinate. How do all of these volumes interact with each other individually to create a larger singular product? And if you dive a little bit deeper into that concept, you start thinking about how different volumes join or intersect, divide or adapt, merge and distort. So how are these objects in space affecting themselves, with each other, with the environment, and with the people who are then interacting with this as well? Now we see certain people, certain industries already leveraging this kind of thinking in really interesting ways. I want to talk about how we are starting to be these architects, designers, the architects of this new world. We need to start thinking about the future because we don't want to be victims of it. So I want to talk a little bit about a really amazing fashion brand that is starting to step into this world and transition into this world in a really interesting way. This is a Congolese fashion brand called Hanifa. And this is a video. I'm sorry if it's a little bit choppy that what you're seeing right now, but it should look like a model walking, except there's no model there. And this is actually the way that this Congolese fashion brand debuted their spring fashion line during COVID. Fashion shows were not happening. Paris Fashion Week was when the big wave in Europe happened with COVID, and a lot of designers were at a loss of how they could convey their designs to the public, because fashion is volumetric. Fashion designers are already thinking in this way because they are taking a two-dimensional fabric and manipulating it to be volumetric. It is critical to show this end product in a three-dimensional space. And so what this fashion brand did is really interesting. They're starting to understand this merge of physical and digital. And imagine how cool this could be if you were actually watching it through a headset and watching this fashion show progress at scale in front of you. It's so important for all industries to do what Hanifa is doing right now and to start exploring these incremental steps of how we can start taking what we are doing in the physical world and bringing it into the digital world in a three-dimensional way. As designers, this is a big part of what we're doing at Questono. We are helping our clients understand how they can begin prototyping and developing products and services, experience that dialogue with their customers' needs, but that aren't overly disruptive. And we like to think about these 6 different principles to guide good design in this space. I'm going to talk briefly about each of these, but the first, and somewhat the most obvious, is awareness. And what awareness means in this sense is that these digital objects are aware that they are in the physical world. They've broken away from the screen. And that brings me to the next one, interactivity, that these digital objects can and should interact with real and digital objects and humans. You should be able to place that digital object on a desk, and it should know that it is sitting next to a physical mug and not run into it. We also have scale, which I think the best way to talk about this is what we were saying before about currently we are looking at augmented reality through the kind of frame of our phone. When we are deeply into mixed reality, we can break away from that, which allows scale. When you're looking through a window, it crops things. Things are cut off. You're limited to the frame of that screen. But with scale in mixed reality, your entire perspective can have, your entire field of view can have digital content in it. I could put the Empire State Building in my backyard if I wanted to. That's a really cool thing. The next one is persistence. And this is an idea of sticky pixels, that digital objects, when they are placed in the physical world, should stay there. If I'm looking at it now and I turn away and I look at it again, it should still be there. It should also still be there if I put on this device a week later. This is where I left it. It has the same behavior of a physical object operating in the physical world. The next one is presence, and this is about enhancing the user's existing capabilities. Similar to captology's functional area of computers being a tool, mixed reality should also be a tool. It should be enhancing our existing capabilities. And lastly, and somewhat most importantly, and the most difficult, is it needs to be respectful of the human experience. And I think that this is achieved through diversity, inclusion, and privacy. It's very important for us to remember that innovation, when we're coming up with these types of ideas for our clients, innovation can be incremental. I think we get in this habit as a society to think that innovation can only be highly disruptive. And I'm not going to lie, XR and mixed reality is disruptive. But it's our job as designers to kind of pull that blue sky vision down into incremental steps for our clients. We need to help them see the vision, how important and impactful this kind of technology can be, but help them develop a roadmap of how they can actually get there. If you think about Google Glass, for instance, it was a really interesting technology, but it was too disruptive. It came at a time before people had smartphones and cameras in their pocket. Social media hadn't gotten to the point yet where everyone was recording everything and live streaming. And so people were concerned back then with Google Glass that they were being recorded. That became this bigger issue than the idea of having content in your peripheral vision that was useful for you. And that, because it was too disruptive of a behavior, made people go, oh my God, this is too much, I don't want it. But now we are slowly building up to being able to feel comfortable with something like that. We are taking these incremental steps and adapting human behavior to start feeling comfortable with these new tools. All of us, I think, have used the Snapchat or Instagram face filters. That is an example of an incremental innovation for a very disruptive technology. And we're very familiar with that now. It feels safe, it feels fun. So it's paving the way on this path to extended reality. This really is what the future is going to be. And I encourage all of you to take this knowledge and to think critically about your industry, your clients, yourself, on how this could impact your industry in a positive way. What are these stepping stones that maybe aren't as disruptive as this image here, but can help you get to this point? Challenge yourself to think about how the things that you are working on in a two-dimensional space, in a digital format, could be transformed and brought into your physical world to allow you and empower you to interact with that in a much more meaningful way. I think that this is a really, really exciting time to be in design and innovation, because we are the ones that get to design these types of experiences. Yet it is so important to always go back to your user, to co-create with them, to understand what our users' pain points and belief systems are, what is their context, because if we ignore that, we will never develop important, valuable mixed reality concepts for them. But I think that this is the future, and it's a really, really exciting place for us to be going. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hannah, for that fantastic talk. On one side, we are impressed and we are waiting eagerly for the future. On the other side, on the other hand, it kind of also scares us with those possibilities saying, is it going to evolve too fast for us? And we do have a couple of questions from the team out here, but unfortunately, we have also run out of time at the same time. I'm going to share at least, give me 1 minute here, at least one question out here.
Sure.
And then give me a moment. There was a question here from Jhalak. She said, can captology be helpful for social organizations or media influencers?
Oh, 100%. Yes, I think captology is just a way to think more critically about how you are interacting with your audience. I think that, we're talking about social actors as a functional area of captology and computers. And that is exactly what marketing and influencers are doing already. That is the success of influencer society, for better or for worse. But they are using social media as a pathway to leverage relationships. And this is what brands are realizing they need to follow as well. Brands are no longer about a product. A brand is an entity that I should, as their customer, believe in. I should share those values as well. And so we're seeing this kind of personification of brands that I think is tied back to this idea of social actors through social media and digital technology.
Thank you so much, Hannah, for your time, for this fantastic presentation. And, this has been really, really illuminating for all of us. We got messages coming in from all corners. To people who have signed in, yes, we are going to record this. It's all being recorded. I hope my tech team is listening in. We're going to nicely slice and dice and chop them and put them up on the website in the coming week. And you can revisit them all. We'll be sharing Hannah's LinkedIn details on the chat box in a minute. And you can reach out to her with all the questions, and she is very busy, but you never know. She can just get
Please
back
do.
to you.
I love talking about this stuff.
Thank you so much, Hannah, and have a good day. And on behalf of all our participants, again, thank you, our audience from all over the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.